You've probably heard this advice before, right? Put your house or maybe a bank account in joint names with your spouse or your kid. It's supposed to be a simple way to skip all the hassle and cost of probate. It seems like a total no-brainer. But what if I told you that one little shortcut could accidentally disinherit your own children, trigger a massive tax bill you never saw coming, or even completely ignore what's in your will? Let's dig into how that can happen. This quote just nails the central problem, doesn't it? Think about that for a second. A single checkbox you tick when you buy a property, often without giving it a second thought, can have more legal muscle than the carefully crafted will you paid a lawyer good money to write. It's a huge conflict, hiding in plain sight. So why is joint ownership so incredibly popular? Well, it all boils down to one simple promise: avoiding that dreaded legal process we call probate. Okay, so what is this probate tax really? It's basically a fee the government charges just to validate your will before your assets can be handed out. Now, 1.5% might not sound like a lot, but when you apply that to a lifetime of savings, and especially the value of a family home, well, those numbers can get very big, very, very fast. Just to put it in perspective, on a $10 million estate, the probate tax bill could be somewhere around $150,000. That is a serious chunk of change that could have gone straight to your family. So it's really no surprise that people are looking for a legal way around it, and that search leads them straight to something called joint tenancy.
And on paper, joint tenancy looks like the perfect answer. The key is its most powerful, almost magical feature: the right of survivorship. This legal principle means that when one joint owner dies, their interest in the property just vanishes. The surviving owner automatically gets 100% of everything. It happens instantly, it happens outside of the will, and it completely avoids that 1.5% probate tax. It sounds simple, clean, and totally effective. But is it?
And this, right here, is where that simple solution gets really, really complicated. You see, while joint tenancy can work beautifully in some very specific situations, for many others, it is loaded with hidden traps that can cause absolutely devastating financial and family problems.
I mean, you'd think so, wouldn't you? A will should be enough to protect the people you love. But what happens when that simple checkbox on your property deed basically goes to war with the legal instructions in your will?
This is just a classic and, frankly, heartbreaking example of good intentions gone wrong. In this scenario, John's will is crystal clear about what he wants for his children, but that right of survivorship from the joint tenancy, it acts like a legal trump card. The second John passes away, the house completely bypasses his will and goes directly to Sarah. The will's instructions for the house are never even looked at, and his children get nothing. They're unintentionally but completely disinherited.
Okay, so that's the family trap. The next one is purely financial. And it often happens when aging parents are trying to be smart by adding an adult child to the title of their home. They think they're giving a gift, but believe me, the tax authority might see it very differently. On the surface, the logic seems pretty solid. On $1 million home, you add your child as a joint tenant, and you could save about $15,000 in probate tax down the road. Looks like a smart move. But here is the sting. If your child doesn't actually live in that house, it's not their principal residence. So when the house is eventually sold, they could be on the hook for capital gains tax on their share of the property's increase in value. You've saved $15,000 in one tax, only to trigger a potential $50,000 plus bill in another. That's a terrible trade. So the crucial point here is this: you're trading a relatively small, predictable cost, that probate tax, for a potentially huge and often completely unexpected one, which is capital gains tax. This shows just how easily a simple probate avoidance strategy can backfire spectacularly from a tax perspective. Now, for the third and maybe the most complex trap of all. When a parent adds an adult child to an asset for free, what does the law actually think is happening? Most of us just assume it's a gift, but the law, it starts with a very different assumption.
The law has this default setting called the presumption of resulting trust. It automatically assumes the child is just holding the property for the parent's estate, not that they've been given it as a true gift. This flips everything on its head. The law's starting point is that the asset should be divided according to the will, and now the burden of proof is on the child to prove it was actually a gift.
This whole principle was cemented in a huge Supreme Court case called Pecor v. Pecor, and the key takeaway is that the automatic assumption of a gift only applies when parents transfer assets to minor children. For adult children, the law presumes it's a trust,
And this single legal detail is what sets the stage for bitter, expensive lawsuits where siblings are forced to argue in court about what their parents really intended.
So what happens when things go wrong not after death, but during life? Say a marriage breaks down or business partners have a falling out. How do you get out of a joint ownership arrangement when the other person just won't cooperate?
Let's talk about the emergency button. Imagine you're in a situation like a marital separation. You could be in a really dangerous limbo. If you're still joint tenants and something happens to you, your estranged spouse could inherit everything. You need a way to protect your share, and you need it immediately. This is a really powerful legal tool called a unilateral severance. It sounds a little strange, but your lawyer literally registers a deed transferring your own interest back to yourself. This simple act legally shatters the joint tenancy, converting it into a different form of ownership. And the most crucial part? You can do this without the other owner's knowledge or consent. It's an immediate shield that gives you back control over your share of the property.
And what if you're just completely deadlocked? One person wants to sell, the other flat out refuses. The absolute last resort is an application for partition and sale. This is where you have to ask a court to step in and force the sale of the property so the money can be split. It really is the ultimate legal exit strategy when co-ownership has become totally unworkable.
All right, we've seen the problems, we've seen the emergency exits. So how do you make the right choice from the very beginning to avoid all these traps in the first place?
This simple table breaks it all down beautifully. With joint tenancy, it's all about automatic inheritance for the survivor. It overrides the will, and it avoids probate, but you lose individual control. This makes it ideal for many married couples. Tenants-in-Common, on the other hand, makes sure your will is the boss. You control your specific share, but that share has to go through probate. This makes it the only safe choice for blended families, business partners, or any situation where ownership isn't a simple 50-50 split.
When you really think about it, your home is so much more than just an asset. It's the financial cornerstone for your family's future. The decision of how you own it is just far too important to be treated as some default option on a form you signed years ago and probably forgot all about.
And that leaves us with one final and really crucial question to think about. After everything we've looked at, take a moment and ask yourself this. If something happened today, would your property deed and your will work together in perfect harmony? Or would they tell two completely different stories with a simple checkbox making the final, irreversible decision?